Welcome to ADROSONIC Pulse, a podcast which is all about where technology meets innovation, business meets transformation, and together we bring to you a space where we have conversations that are shaping the tech landscape today. I'm your host Marvi Sharma, and this episode features Mark Hamblin, Chief Operating Officer at the Shipowners Club. Over the years, Mark has led the Shipowners Club through major digital transformation journeys. He's been a driving force in blending technology with operations, and as ADROSONIC's longest-standing partner, he's played a key role in shaping this collaboration. We're really excited to have him here today to share about his experiences, his insights, and talk about his leadership, and of course, talk about the future of marine insurance. Welcome, Mark. We're really excited to have you here at ADROSONIC Pulse.
Thank you very much for having me.
Could you briefly talk about what your journey has been like at Shipowners and how you led on to your professional career, and how did you get into the marine insurance industry?
My background, my first job out of university was in banking, and so I spent 7 or 8 years working for emerging markets in a bank, traveling around Africa, installing technology, installing different types of systems, which was a great introduction to a career. Lots of one-to-one time with my then boss, who I travelled with all over Southern Africa. I then moved to a fairly large insurer, LV, and so since those first 7 years, first 7 or 8 years with a bank, and then the rest of it with different insurers, always mutual insurers, and eventually with Shipowners, where I've been for a long time now. I really enjoyed, previous to Shipowners and especially with Shipowners, working for a mutual, an organisation that's not there to make a profit, but is there to offer a great service. So when I joined the club in 2012, I probably suspected I'd be there for 2, 3, 4 years. I didn't have any great plan. As it happens, I've been there 13 and I'm going nowhere for a while, so it's been a great place to be.
That's great. So then, having moved from technology into broader operations, what's one change or challenge that you've recognized and that surprises you the most?
Eventually, when your remit is broader, the amount of detail that you can get into is smaller, and I quite enjoy getting into detail. So that's been a challenge, has been to step outside of that and know that you have to be at a higher level, you have to understand the principles, and you're thinking about things in a macro sense.
Right. So then, from your experience across these leadership roles, what is the one leadership lesson that you still take yourself with, and what guides you?
If I had to talk about the things that I think are important from a leadership perspective, it is genuinely finding a great team. It is then trusting that great team. Easy to say and hard to do, but you have to let go and you have to let people do their jobs. And then I think transparency. So share as much information as you possibly can. And I say this to the guys I work with a lot. What we want is an organisation where the bad news travels faster than the good. So Good news is great. Everybody loves good news. But bad news is the things you need to do something about. So the quicker the bad news travels, the better off you are.
That's a great insight. But going back to the previous question, so you mentioned about challenges, right?
Yep.
So how do you see the leadership challenge that you've evolved in these roles, and of course when you work with different teams, there are shifts amongst the teams that you encounter and experience. So as a leader, how have you seen that grow within yourself?
People talk about the Peter Principle, the idea of getting promoted one level above your competence, and that's always worried me. I think it should worry you, because I think if you have too much confidence that you're innately capable of doing the next job, you're probably not ready. So you are supposed to have an amount of fear. As I've been promoted at the Shipowners, and I've spoken about this with my boss, each promotion has taken me longer to feel comfortable with. So I think when I became head of IT, I felt like I was ready for that role. It didn't take too long to get comfortable with it. When I became CTO, just adding the word chief suddenly created an amount of pressure. And then in November 2020, I became a director of the club. And whilst I always try to think about the club as if it's my business, as if I am an owner of it, it changed things. All of a sudden you feel responsible for ensuring that payroll is met, that ensuring all of the people that work for you are well looked after and well treated, and that the business has a strong future and it's not somebody else's job anymore. I think that's the big challenge.
The Shipowners Club has been ADROSONIC's partner for 13 years now.
Yep.
And so then what initially drew you to collaborate with ADROSONIC, and how has that relationship evolved?
When you start working with an organisation, there's not a huge amount to go on. You can sign a contract, you can look at the financials, you can do all of the kind of due diligence, but really it's the people that you work with and whether you feel like you can trust them. And that was, I always felt that with ADROSONIC. So I always felt like when issues occurred, when things went wrong, which they always inevitably do. I could phone Sonal or I could phone Mayank and I could have a conversation with them about it and they would react to it. So it mattered to them in a personal way, in the same way that my job matters to me personally. And so you get a sense of that. And if you're working with an organisation or with a group of people where it doesn't feel personal, that shows as well. And it shows with the extra effort that people are willing to put in, the hours that people are willing to work when they need to. Why did we start working with ADROSONIC? It was about trust. It's still about that trust now. I think of Mayank and Sonal as good friends of mine. We see each other fairly regularly. We enjoy a good chat when we meet, but ultimately we all know that we're here to do a job and we all take it quite seriously. And one of the things that my boss says, he always talks about the idea that we take the job seriously, but we don't take ourselves seriously. And I think that is very true, and that's a good way of going about things.
Right. I also saw the Shipowners Club completed 100 years,
170
right?
years.
This year. So 170 years this year?
Yep. Yep. So we just finished our celebrations a couple of weeks ago.
Right. A decade ago, you've seen where Shipowners was,
Yep.
and how in 170 years, how Shipowners Club has evolved.
Yep.
But how do you see ADROSONIC making a difference in those many years that we've been a part of your journey?
It's a good question. I think insurance is one of the older industries in the world. We've been doing it for a long time. And one of the things I realised very quickly when I joined the club was that we needed to grow and evolve and develop, but we'd been very successful for 155-ish years at that point. And so we didn't need to change too quickly because we were obviously doing something right to have lasted for that long. What has changed is technology is ever more important in the working world. And I would go so far as to say somebody that came from my background, which is a technology background, would be very unlikely to be a COO 10, 15, 20 years ago. The fact that it's considered completely reasonable now shows how much importance is placed in technology in all businesses. So our job is we take a premium to insure a risk. We know that risk might materialise, and when it happens, our job is to pay, and to pay quickly, and that's what we do. When we work with ADROSONIC, it's the same thing. So the QA team, the people that are doing the testing on our behalf, they are helping us to ensure peace of mind. They are ensuring that the technology change that we put live is safe, is secure, is capable of doing the job that it needs to, and will allow us to do our job. So I think that's a hugely important capability. And we, again, as we've said before, we've entrusted ADROSONIC with that task for well over a decade now, and you don't do that unless you have confidence in ADROSONIC as it is, or any company's ability to do the job for you.
Right. So Mark, we've talked about your leadership roles. So as a COO, what are your core focus areas, and especially given your deep technology background?
At the moment, the thing I'm worried about most, the thing I'm thinking about most, is about how we can be as efficient as possible as an organisation, whilst ensuring that we offer the best level of service that we can. So we've been a service-focused business. What we do is very bespoke. It's very unique to our brokers and to our members, and that necessarily creates a level of cost because you can't have consistency because everybody needs something different. Over the last few years, legacy modernisation has been our key focus, making sure that we had systems that were up to date and capable of supporting us. As we look forward, we're very much thinking about operational efficiency. So how, as a business, do we run as efficiently and effectively as possible, but with that goal of servicing our members? And so it's quite an interesting challenge because high levels of service don't generally lend themselves to very vanilla operational processes. So we need to find the right balance, and that really is the thing I think about most at the moment.
All right. So, thinking of a high stakes decision where you had limited information, what guided your choice, or what guides your choices, and what have been the outcomes?
Genuinely, when I'm making decisions, I think part of the job of being in a senior position is the decisions that come your way tend to be 60-40 decisions. Otherwise, somebody else would have made them earlier. So you're going to get some of them wrong. It's just inevitable. It's a very basic fact that you're going to get some decisions wrong. And so the key to doing the job well, in my personal view, is having the ability to keep making decisions, knowing that you'll get some wrong, and then being able to make another decision and another decision. And there are very, very few decisions that you make that can't be undone. So you will, leading up to the event where you make the decision, there can be a lot of stress. But ultimately, once you've made it, if it was the wrong decision, as long as you did it in good faith and you did it for the right reasons, you can usually undo the decision, or you can make another decision that will help you. So I guess what I'm saying is I try not to get too stressed about decisions because that's what you're paid for. That's the job.
Yeah, absolutely. So then, with rising geopolitical risks affecting trade especially, how have you adapted to operations to stay at the front or resilient?
It's been a real big challenge for our business. I think if I go back to even when I joined and before I joined, our job was to offer insurance, and then in the terms of that insurance in the contract, it said that people had to behave lawfully. And if they didn't behave lawfully, then the insurance contract would be breached and they would cease to be insured. So our job wasn't to police, it was to in good faith enter into a contract and an agreement with a third party. Nowadays, regulators and governments are much more interested in us ensuring that the people that we insure are operating legally and in the way that they're supposed to be. And that means we have to capture a huge amount of information: where vessels are, what those vessels are doing, what cargo they're carrying, where the crew's from. And so we now have to understand much more, and that all of those things increase the cost of doing business. Mm-hmm. My job is to make sure that we can capture that information as effectively and efficiently as possible with the least amount of cost, and that we can make the right decisions as quickly as possible, so that we don't find ourselves on the wrong side of a regulator or a government body. And so that's the biggest change I've seen, really, is that geopolitical tension, of which there is plenty, has made our jobs more complex than they used to be, and we need to use technology, but intellect and technology to make sure that we do a good job of understanding those risks.
Yeah. So picking on the intellect and the technology, with automation, AI, and data analytics rising, how do you see these technologies impacting your risk management and operations?
Well, it's a big question. Data is central. to any good business. If you want to run an operations function, if you want to make a business operate efficiently, you need to understand what it's doing. You need to understand how well it's doing it. And so when we deliver systems, we also have to think about what data points do we want to capture in those systems. Not functionally what will they do, which is obviously vital, but how will we understand how well they're doing their job and how well the people that operate those systems are functioning. I think there will be inevitably more automation. There will be, if we think back 20 or 30 years, at one point people used paper for a ledger, then we invented accounting systems and Excel changed the world, and then we started to come up with RPA, robot process automation, which started to automate predictable processes, and now with AI we're starting to automate unpredictable processes. So it can understand context, it can understand past history at a much more granular level. So the amount of processes that we can automate will inevitably increase. What I hope and what I believe is that will free humans up to do more interesting work. You know, that the technology will do more of the grunt work, and that humans can do more of the creative work, and they can be more imaginative. And I think there's been a narrative in the world over the last few years that technology is sort of bad and it strips away some level of communication and empathy and community, but it's not. It's agnostic. It doesn't care. It's about how we use it. So if we use technology in a good way, it will be positive, and if we use it in a bad way, it will be negative. So my job is to make sure we use technology in a way that makes our business better, not worse.
Right. So then continuing to that, what you see is as the top two trends shaping the marine insurance industry, and what do you expect coming in the next 3-5 years, or let's say in the next 10 years?
If you'd have asked me that question a year ago, I would have said it would be about decarbonisation and it would be about climate. But geopolitics being what they are, that has been pushed further back on the agenda. So for the short term, I think in our world it will be about demographic change. So we have a lot of people in our industry that have been working in the industry for a very long time. So we're going to retire a huge amount of knowledge from our business and other businesses over the next few years. And how we deal with that, how we develop the next generation of people to run businesses will be crucial. And then I think that climate change, decarbonisation challenge will come back, because whilst the politics has pushed it down the agenda, the facts didn't change. So the climate is still going to change, and we are still going to have to do something about it. So I think when we look 5 to 10 years out, that will be firmly back on the agenda at some. I don't know when, but at some point it will be back on the agenda, because it's an inevitability rather than a choice.
Right. So my last question: looking ahead, how do you see ADROSONIC's role evolving with the Shipowners Club, considering the trends that we're seeing, the challenges that we're seeing? So how do you see it evolving?
I mean, we're in the new office today in Pune, and I think I said yesterday that I've always called my anchor liar, because every time I've ever spoken to him, he's talked about what his goals for the business are, and I never believed that they were as small as he was being cautious. He wasn't a liar. He was being sensible. He was being cautious, but he always had bigger dreams for what he wanted ADROSONIC to be. I think you guys have got 3 offices now, and you can see this office is a step forward on the Mumbai office, and I haven't been to the Lucknow office. But what ADROSONIC has done in all the time I've worked with the company is evolve and change and develop, and that will be what we need. So from a ship owner's perspective, working with ADROSONIC, what we need from ADROSONIC is what they always do, which is to continue to evolve and to change the way they do things and push boundaries. And so the industry we work in, we are not on the cutting edge of technology. We try to be a fast follower. And so we try to make sure that we make sensible risk-based bets on the technologies we're going to use, and we rely on organisations like ADROSONIC to help us with that, to bring the deep technical knowledge that allows us to make those good decisions. And so what I want from ADROSONIC is more of the same, to just keep doing what they've been doing over the last decade or so.
But do you think that the insurance industry must cutting edge technology, or it would be wise for insurance industry to be a follower, like a fast follower?
Again, I think the thing that I would say is there's nothing new under the sun. Everything that we talk about is a variation on an old theme. We don't need to be on the cutting edge, because what we do, we've been doing for 170 years. And it hasn't changed at its base, but the way we do it, the way we offer our service has changed, and the regulatory burden has grown. So I would much prefer to watch other organisations spend a lot of money and learn, make mistakes, learn, and then that we can take those lessons and we can implement ourselves. So I'd always like to be one step behind the people that are at the actual cutting edge. I think that's a sensible way to spend what is effectively our members' money. So when we spend money on technology or anything else, we have to be conscious that it's ultimately the members' money that we're spending. So being at the absolute cutting edge would likely mean we'd make more mistakes and spend money without an outcome, and we don't want to do that. We're quite lucky as an organisation that we didn't have a huge amount of legacy. So we did have legacy systems, but they weren't sprawling. When I worked at a bank, we had hundreds and hundreds of systems that were all dependent on each other, and it becomes very, very hard to move on from legacy. We were quite lucky. We had a supportive board, and we had a long program of legacy modernisation, but it was quite predictable. So we could deal with one system at a time, and that made a huge difference for us. So I think we were quite lucky, really.
That's great. Let's move on to the rapid fire round.
Okay.
The one app that you can't live without.
WhatsApp.
WhatsApp, all right. AI in insurance, is it a hype or a must-have?
Must-have.
Must-have, great. If you could automate one daily task instantly, what would it be?
Brushing my teeth. What a pain in the neck that is.
Right. If the Shipowners Club were a ship, what would it be named as?
Ooh, that's a very good question. Our old system was called Sigma, I think, and we had a love-hate relationship with that system, so maybe Sigma would be the name of the ship.
Right. A technology you wish existed already?
I've got a robot vacuum, but I also have a dog who had an upset stomach last week, and so the robot vacuum just, moved his mess around the lounge. So I'd like to invent a sensor that could spot when it needs to not vacuum.
Right. That's a smart technology.
We need that.
Yes. What's one book or movie that has changed your perspective on leadership or innovation?
I read a book called 4,000 Weeks recently, which broadly talks about the idea that we're here for a very short amount of time, and so you need to be in the moment and enjoy the moment, really. I think that's probably the thing that I resonate with the most.
Right. Biggest myth about insurance that you'd love to bust?
But it's boring. It's not. It's endlessly fascinating.
Yeah. If you had to describe ADROSONIC in one word, what would it be?
Evolution.
That's great. If you weren't in insurance or tech, what would you be doing today?
Mowing the lawn, probably.
If you could have dinner with one tech visionary, living or past, who would it be?
Charles Babbage, the man who invented the idea of the computer. So he would be a fascinating person to speak to.
That's amazing. So thank you so much, Mark, for being at ADROSONIC Pulse today. We've loved chatting with you to hear more about from your experiences and your insights, and especially about the leadership qualities and the roles that you've, over a decade now, that you've transformed yourself as well, and through ADROSONIC and Shipowners.
It's making me feel old. Thank you very much for having me. It's been great fun.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you.
This was Morbi from ADROSONIC Pulse signing off. See you next time.